New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says more storms are on the way, and he knows exactly why.
And that's part of the changing climate, I believe, that has brought this new extreme weather pattern. And it's we have to adjust to. It's something that's very costly. It's also something that is very dangerous.
All right, to our Fox Biz All-Stars, Mercedes Schlapp and Mark Serrano, and, of course, Hadley Heath Manning. Mark, you say the governor's head's in the clouds. Why?
Well, the governor and Mayor de Blasio, they're in a tough spot. They had to respond to this storm. They were damned if they did, damned if they didn't. But, you know, scientists, even those who support climate change theories, say that there's no causal relationship between any single storm and their climate change theories. So what happens with a lot of politicians is they'll talk about climate change as if the debate is over, and they immediately move to policy solutions. And the problem with that is the policy solutions are typically bigger government, and the government gets in the business of picking winners and losers. So, for instance, with auto emissions or energy production, you know, we're subsidizing wind and solar, which are not very good investments for the taxpayer, and then we're penalizing coal producers. We should be creating a level playing field instead for hydro and nuclear. Those things are non-carbon emitting. Instead of picking winners and losers. And so that's where I think this will head.
No, I hear where you're coming from. But Hadley, I worry any time that it wasn't too long ago that we used to hear this global warming. That one didn't work, so they moved to climate change, which is sort of like covers you for any development. But my big worry here is that they're seizing on this debt. I guess in 2014 it was the warmest year on record, or at least as long as we've been keeping records. But they're saying that warming atmosphere is what's producing these storms and making it so bad and feeding this. What do you make of that?
Right. Well, the explanations I've read from climate scientists say that because of the warmer atmospheric pressures or warmer ocean climates, that snowstorms like this simply slow down, and that means they leave more accumulation, they become more severe. But the bottom line is, I'm not a climate science expert, and neither is Governor Cuomo. So we have to have some humility when we approach this issue. It's a very complicated scientific issue, and beyond that, even if we could determine that man-made climate change isn't causing some of these storms or some more catastrophic effects, the other questions remain: what can we do about it, and what should we do about it?
Yeah, that's what worries me. And to that point, Mercedes, my big worry when we do something like this and assign all sorts of, reasonings for it, that we start spending money we really don't have to address a problem we're not 100% sure is going to be solved this way. Many argue that, let's say you do, the Earth is getting warmer, that the way, that plays out in the atmosphere is anyone's guess with these storms. Because it wasn't that long ago, the same crowd was saying we would all be wearing Bermuda shorts in January and February, and of course we're not. So what do you make of all this?
Do you remember the speech last year that Mayor de Blasio gave to the UN, where he literally said that it is because of our reckless ways of living, of how we live, that, basically that's causing climate change or global warming or whatever the term that they want to use this year. So, for them to go forth and just keep blaming human beings and putting these scare tactics that we're making this huge impact on the climate changing or these big storms is just preposterous. And so it gets to the point where, they end up then building these policies out. So, for example, in the case of New York City, where he made a goal where they were going to reduce by 80% greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. So they set up these very big, aggressive government intervention programs in hopes that this in any way will stop the globe from getting warmer, which, as we know, as scientists are tracking this, it's planning to get warmer by 1 degree. And so it just comes to a point that it's really like, why keep putting the blame on the human beings? Let's just take it as it is. The climate, guess what? It's going to be changing.
It's going to be changing. And I tell you, real quickly, Mark, I don't want to, but you follow this very, very closely. When I was a kid, we would have storms, and then we'd have a period where there weren't as many storms. It just was like a Geiger counter. You follow it. Now they're assigning some bigger rationale for that Geiger counter reading, and I worry about that because that means open your wallet.
Well, the politicians ought to turn to their act of God clause instead of trying to explain the inexplicable. This is coming off the heels just 2 years ago of Superstorm Sandy, and it was very devastating and caused tremendous economic impact. You're right. The climate's going to do what the climate's going to do. We've got to be very careful, though, about how this translates in terms of policy solutions.
Yeah.
And so right now it's just talk, but we got to be very careful and monitor that, because we got to let the free market control things like our energy production and auto emissions instead of government trying to control everything.
Yeah, I still wonder what it was when I was a kid. And that was only, I know, 10 years ago. But anyway, guys, thank you all very much. We'll be back a little later in the show. Now, if only we had March Madness brackets to keep